Anthony Edwards sends just one 5-word tweet that sends Timberwolves fans into the upper atmosphere of excitement over what could possibly happen next season. On today's episode, I want to talk about Anthony Edwards and what does he need to do to reach the next step in his game. We'll talk a little bit about that. Plus, Indiana Pacers head coach Rick Carlisle and his thoughts and expectations for Ben Mathurin heading into next season. We'll talk about all that and more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball related. I'm the host, Sarah Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. Anthony Edwards sent one tweet, said, back in that mode again. And of course, that sends Timberwolves fans to be excited. You had some Wolves fans saying things like, can't wait to see you bring a championship to Minneapolis. Another one said, my favorite basketball player of all time. And the question that I want to have, I want to take that and use that to talk about Anthony Edwards. Now, this is a player that very well could be the next face of the league. Could be. He has the skill set. He has the mindset to be that as well. I think he has the personality of it. But the question that I want to have here more so than that, which is an arbitrary conversation anyway, you got to earn being the face of the league. That's something that has a lot of factors to go into it. What needs to be the next step of Anthony Edwards' game? What has to be that next step for him as a player? That's a question that I want to have here. Anthony Edwards, who took a big step facilitating last year, shoot 3-point shooting wise, he took a big step last year as well. And, that's a big thing in what makes somebody a complete player. And Anthony Edwards is on the precipice of being that. No questions, no doubt about it. I'm not even going to hear anything else on that. But the question that we have there, and even when you look at fairness in Anthony Edwards, there's some questions about his playoff performances at times last year. You look at the Western Conference Finals. He had 2 games of scoring over 30 points. He didn't score over 20 points in three of the other games, right? You look at the performance against the Golden State Warriors. Yeah, he consistently scored over 20 points, shot 47% from the field and 44% from three. That was probably his best series of that one, but he had turnover mistakes, those type of things. What needs to happen with Anthony Edwards? And that's I think, a multi-layered question that we're not going to be able to get into it all here when it comes down to it. But Anthony Edwards is a solid defender. You look at his the way that he holds players to like field goal, a 46% overall field goal shooting percentage on players that he guards in one-on-one scenarios. That's really good. He guards the 3-point line at a 36%. It's solid enough, but he has some areas like less than 6 feet away from the rim is 61%, 57 less than 10 feet away from the rim. He needs to tighten those things up, right? But I don't think anybody's going to say and look at Anthony Edwards and say he's a terrible defender. Does he need to make that step defensively? Is that where it needs to go? You look at what he did last year offensively, right? Last year in the playoffs, offensively, 54% of his buckets were unassisted. And I think that speaks a lot to the Minnesota Timberwolves and them not having a point guard that they kind of need there to kind of make everything hum and free up Anthony Edwards to kind of be more of a dangerous scorer when it comes down to that. But one of the things is he shot 33% on above the break threes, 46% from corner threes. You got to be better than that. He shot 30% from mid-range. And while I know that's not where a lot of players shoot in the mid-range anymore, that's another hole to his game that he can definitely shore up. In the paint, 56%, restricted area, 54%, solid enough in those areas, right? But, that's just something that you can look at that you can try to tighten up. During the regular season for Anthony Edwards as well, it was pretty much the same thing. 57% of his points of buckets were unassisted, with 42% being assisted. He shot the ball 43% from the corner three, 38% from above the break three. That's really good. 37% in the mid-range. 40% in the paint, 63% in the restricted area. Really good. And his shot, it's balanced all over the board. 44% of his shots did come from above the break three. So there you go on that one. 6% came from the corner three. So you're looking at 50% of his shots came from 3-point range, which is crazy when you look at it, but that's modern day basketball. Another 14% came in the paint and 22% came in the restricted area. So he's near the bucket for about 36% of his buckets elsewhere. Solid enough, right? So Anthony Edwards is a player that outside of the mid-range, which many people would make the case that isn't necessarily where most people are attacking the basket anymore, or attacking the game anymore. You have some very specific players that are high usage mid-range players, but he's versatile in the way that he scores, right? So what needs to happen for Anthony Edwards? And I think that the thing that he needs to do, especially when you look at some of the playoff performances, is that, and I in no way would say that Anthony Edwards isn't a clutch player or doesn't make right decisions, either passing wise or whatever else. He does. He makes the right decisions more time than not. He's a solid rebounder, especially for his position and those type of things. He was 4th in the league in scoring. Like, you can't take away anything from Anthony Edwards, but I think one of the things that needs to grow, and that has. I think the last season you saw Anthony Edwards grow as a leader. When the Minnesota Timberwolves were going through their adversity, he called out some of his teammates, but he also, almost every time you read a quote of him saying something about one of his teammates, he talked about himself in that too. I think that leadership aspect is important, especially for a team that's trying to rally together in a Western Conference and make a run for it. And that's really good, right? So Anthony Edwards is this player that, has all the talent in the world. But I think that, when you look at a couple of years ago, there was conversation, could he be the face of the league? That's still around a little bit. That's kind of shifted now to Wemby, that type of thing. And Anthony Edwards sits in a place that he's starting to get to the place. 2 Western Conference Finals trips. Now it's about to start being, can you get over that hump? The last thing you want is the stigma of a player, the best player on the team, that can't get over that hump and get to a finals. And that's what Anthony Edwards and the Minnesota Timberwolves really need to focus in on this year. Everything needs to be built around how do they get over that hump and get to the finals. And it's going to be very difficult. You got a team in the OKC Thunder that just won the title. We already know they're already difficult before then. They now kind of understand the pacing that it's going to take to get there. You got teams like the Spurs that are nipping, ready for, they're going to be ready to take off soon as Wemby hit a leap. You got the Houston Rockets that are right there. The Denver Nuggets are always going to be right there as well. This is going to be a gauntlet. And so Anthony Edwards growing in leadership, I think sometimes he needs to grow defensively as well. Again, no slouch defensively. I want to be clear there. He has a career defensive rating of 122. And why that's not the end-all, be-all is defensive rating, it's not the 109 that he had in 2023-24, but still a really good defensive rating. 110 is about the average. The lower number is the better number for those that don't know that. And this is a season that I think, especially because the Timberwolves didn't do a whole lot on paper to dramatically make their team better, right? I would have loved to see them be out more aggressive about going out there and getting a point guard. They didn't. They lost Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They got Terrence Shannon Jr., who is ready to step into that role in a very different way, though. Not the defender that Nickeil Alexander-Walker is, but it has crazy upside as a scorer. You brought back Julius Randle. You brought back Naz Reid. You're hoping that Dante DiVincenzo can have a better season than what he did last year. But it all comes down to Anthony Edwards. Not to say that he's the only reason why this team can win games or get over the hump, but you want to be that player. You have that mindset. You have that mentality. You have the personality. You have the cockiness. You have everything that goes into being potentially a great player in this league. Now you have to be ready to make that next step. And the question here is Anthony Edwards ready to make that next step? Not just from being a really good player in this league and a star. Is he ready to make that ascension level run to where now you're talking about Anthony Edwards as a guy that can put the team on his back and push forward and get to an NBA Finals? And the path that he would have to do to get there, of course, we don't know how injuries and things are going to shake out, would be very, very difficult to do. I love Anthony Edwards as a player. And, not just because of the Jordan son thing that it's silly, it's funny to talk about, but, just because of the way that he attacks the game. And so we'll see what happens here. It's going to be a big step for this Minnesota Timberwolves team. They won 49 games last season, had their struggles in the middle part of the season there. How much of that can they overcome and be consistent this year is going to be a big part of that for this Timberwolves team. And we'll see what they can end up doing. But let me know down below, what do you guys think? What is the next step for Anthony Edwards to hit whatever next level you see that being for him? And do you think that he can get to a finals as soon as this upcoming year? Let me know what you guys think on that down below. Now, from one player that I like to another player that I love a lot, literally since he got drafted into this league, when Ben Mathurin said, hey, LeBron's going to have to show me, it endeared me to Ben Mathurin. Not to knock LeBron, but just because of having that type of mindset is huge there. Rick Carlisle was talked about how they're going to balance out the roster with Haliburton out, and he said this. I'll break the news right here. I'm projecting him as our starter at the 2 this year. In regards to Ben Mathurin, I think on day 1, I told him this. I was on the phone with him and his agent 4 days ago, and I said, you're going to be the starters on day 1. It's your job to lose, but here's what we need from you. But Ben Mathurin is going to get there. He's just he has such great gifts as a scorer, and our job as coaches is to meld guys like him that aren't necessarily seamless fits into the style that is effective for the rest of our guys and bring both forces hopefully closer together as time goes on. Rick Carlisle praising Ben Mathurin and what he can do as a scorer. And in this season, especially with Tyrese Haliburton slated to miss the entirety of the season, you want to see guys step up, whether that's Nembhard, whether that's Ben Mathurin, whoever that is. You want to see those guys take steps in their game so that way you can use this season as a primer and get ready for when you get Tyrese Haliburton back. Now, they got some problems up front. They're thin up front. That's there. You can't take away from that. And I do think they'll try to address that between now and the return of Tyrese Haliburton. But this is a season for Ben Mathurin to really make a name for himself and to show that he can be a starter in this league consistently. He's flirted in and out of that starting lineup before with varying rates of success. And I love that Rick Carlisle talked about, like, it's finding a way to mesh the style that Ben Mathurin is best at with the way that the rest of the team needs to play that's conducive to winning basketball games. And that's what Ben Mathurin is going to have to learn to do and learn to sacrifice himself. And his numbers at a starter were basically the same as coming off the bench. He started 49 games last season. He shot the ball 45% from the field, 35% from three, average 16.7 points per game, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 turnovers. You got to get that down, especially if you're going to be, in that starter and be the scorer for this Indiana Pacers team. But this is a season where you're looking for a big leap from Ben Mathurin. And I think that he's up to the test. 23 years old. He just turned 23 back in June, so he's 23 for the entirety of this year. This is Ben Mathurin's opportunity to show what he can be in this league and get a lot of the lion's share of the offense to go through him if he plays into that role really well. Will he? That's the biggest question when it comes down to Ben Mathurin. I think he has the talent. I think he has the skill, but that doesn't always mean that it comes together. But let me know what you guys think on that down below. What do you think about Ben Mathurin and his chance of maybe being the focal point offensively? Of course, Siakam is going to get his touches and stuff as well. But what do you think about Ben Mathurin and his increased role that he's going to see with Tyrese Haliburton out next season? Let me know what you guys think on that down below. That's my time for today. Make sure you guys are following us at NBA Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, NBA Central Show at gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the #1 spot for everything basketball related. I'll see you guys the next time I feel like making a video. Bye tomorrow. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.